Joining me live in the studio is the Shadow Treasurer, Angus Taylor. Angus Taylor, thanks for your time as always. You've said that the one budget the government and the Treasurer didn't talk about today was the household budget, that the household budget is in tatters.
Right.
What more should be done to help households?
Take pressure off inflation, take pressure off taxes, take pressure off mortgage payments, because that's where the pain's coming from. So we've seen the sharpest reduction in household disposable income of any advanced country in the world. Here in Australia, we are absolutely at the back of the pack in dealing with this, Kieran, which is a sad indictment on the government, on how this is being dealt with. And the result of that is Australians are really feeling the pain going into Christmas. This budget doesn't deal with that. It is a budget which is more taxing, more spending, more people, more immigration. Make no mistake about it, they're not cutting immigration. It's going up from 1.5 million to 1.6 million after over 500,000 in this last year. And all of that is adding to more pain from mortgage payments, from inflation, and, of course, the cost of living pressures that are really bearing down on every Australian household.
Isn't the government putting downward pressure on inflation by banking most of the latest windfall, the taxation windfall?
This is just spin. I mean, the Treasurer thinks he can spin his way out of this. They're spending...
So of the 66 billion revised upgrade in revenue, they're saying they're banking over 60 billion of that.
Let's look at... Well, first of all, he gets those numbers wrong. So he ignores the extra spending from parameter variation. But without getting into the technicalities, the important point here is this. If you look at the saves versus the spends in this MyEFO, it's 5 to 1 in terms of spending. They're spending $5 for every dollar they save on the revenue side. And this is typical of this government. They say one thing and do another. They say energy prices are coming down, energy prices are going up. They say cost of living pressures are easing on Australian households. No Australian household believes that, Kieran. They say immigration is coming down, immigration is going up. And, you know, the problem with this Treasurer is he thinks the answer is spin.
Surplus, though.
Well, at the end of the day, when you're hitting Australians with an extra 27% of income tax, so they're taking in 27% more income tax than they were when they came into government, hitting Australian households with that. Well, you could take from households to try and fix your budget. The trouble is you're wrecking household budgets in the process.
But he's delivered stage 3.
Well, you know, let's see. I mean, we all know that the Labor backbench wants to see it gone. We all know that they really don't like it. They should. They made a commitment to in the budget. And we certainly are going to keep pressuring them to do that. And it's the right thing because we've seen this massive increase in taxation for Australians. Many Australians will be sitting there going into Christmas saying, I don't understand why I got less in my bank account. And the truth is there's 3 big factors at work here, Kieran. Number 1 is increased taxes, 27% since they came into government. Number 2 is increased prices of everything. We're approaching 10% increase in the price of the average product or service across Australia. And of course, we're also seeing increased mortgage payments, a tripling of interest payments since Labor came to power. So all of those things are devastating household budgets. This government could have really gone hard at this early. They chose not to. Now we're in a position where there's enormous pain going into Christmas, and we are at the back of the pack compared to other countries dealing with this. It is homegrown.
Just to clarify that simple, the starting point here, where the Treasurer says, and he's coming on the program in the next hour, he's saying he's banking 90% of the revenue. You say it's smoke and mirrors.
It's wrong.
Are you pointing to the off-budget spending measures?
No, if you just look at the policy initiatives, here's the page 58 in the budget. There's $5 of extra spending for every dollar of saving. It's on the page. I mean, and this is what the Treasurer does. He makes this number up, where he doesn't compare apples with apples. He compares an apple with an orange and says, you know, look how tricky I am. But, you know, you can't spin your way through this, Kieran. I've got really sick of listening to this guy's spin. He is a doctor of spin, not a doctor of economics. He clearly doesn't understand the underlying economics here, which is you have to pull every lever available to government. There is a better way on this.
So what spending would you cut?
Well, we've already opposed $45 billion of spending in the Parliament in recent months. $18 billion of interest payments associated with that spending.
And will you revoke each of those measures?
Well, we've been very clear about those measures. I mean, crisscrossing the country with power lines right now, and that's not the answer to an inflation crisis. This government doesn't have its priorities right. It hasn't had its eye on the ball. Now Australians are paying a high price that the Treasurer keeps spinning it. He comes out with a new slogan. It was Triple M this week. Triple M. Well, I'll tell you what the Triple M is: more taxes, more spending and more immigration. That's the Triple M. But there's a new slogan every day. And the truth is he has to do that because he doesn't have the answers.
Do you accept that more cost of living help now, explicit cost of living help, say reducing the fuel excise or something along those lines, would drive up inflation?
Well, at the moment, the way to give cost of living help is to get inflation down. And that's the problem with this government. Its natural instinct to everything is to spend more. $22,000 per household in extra spending since Labor came to government. So you wouldn't support a fuel excise reduction? We support lower inflation. There's no point picking on one item and saying, well, we're going to fix that when everything else is going up. It doesn't work. The way to beat inflation is to pull every single lever available, not making the wrong industrial relations calls, not making the wrong competition policy law calls, not adding $22,000 of spending for every Australian household. They're getting all of these calls wrong. And that's why we're ending up in this situation where people are talking about providing direct cost of living support because the government's completely failed to deal with the source of the problem.
Do you think that they get some credit from voters, though, for likely delivering another surplus? They've delivered one and probably another one.
Well, at the end of the day, what we've got right now is the sharpest fall in household disposable income of any advanced country in the world here in Australia. And I think voters know what that means for them. They're paying for this government to spend more and to crow. And the government wants a pat on the back for that. Well, I don't think Australians are in the mood to give them a pat on the back for that.
On the UN vote and the ceasefire discussion, Australia voting in favour of the ceasefire, copped some flack from the Israeli ambassador and others. What's your reaction?
Well, we've been consistent on this, that Israel has the right to defend itself. If the government's moving away from that, and it clearly is, that's a major issue. We would all celebrate a ceasefire which is preceded by hostages being released and Hamas being dismantled, Kieran. That's what we all want to see. But moving away from that fundamental position where Israel should be able to defend itself against incredible atrocities, I think that's a major move by the government, and it's incredibly disappointing that they don't have the moral clarity that they claim they have and that they should have.
Mr. Taylor, appreciate your time.
Good on you, Kieran.